Welcome, everybody. If you are looking for negotiation strategies, you are in the right spot. I'm Kelly Coughlan. I'm the Senior Career Manager, and I am joined today by an alumni from George Mason University. So I'm so thrilled that Aida's here with us, and I am going to let Aida, you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Aida Davalos. I'm an alumna and former international student at GMU. I'm also an entrepreneur, community advocate, and an accounting professional. And through my work, I focus on helping small businesses and young professionals build really strong financial foundations for their futures and confidence in money, careers, and opportunities. And I'm very excited to be here today with Kelly to share a very important skill that you need to have as you embark on this career journey, which is salary negotiation. I hope I can share with you my journey through it and, working with entrepreneurs and young professionals. And I'm looking forward to this conversation and hearing your feedback and any questions you may have. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled you're here. So we will go through all the things. There's different areas, of course, that we can negotiate. Some of you may have already experienced. And so here's our first quote. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. Okay. So I have certainly had the experience myself where I didn't negotiate. It didn't even occur to me to negotiate. I was working for actually, I was working for a university and I got a job at a nonprofit. And what they were offering me was a lot more than I was currently getting paid. And so it didn't even occur to me to negotiate. And now, of course, how much money did I leave on the table by not even, trying to negotiate that? And then, of course, I've also had the reverse happen where I was applying for jobs. And when they ask you, what's your salary range or what's your desired salary? I put the range that I desired and then heard back from them. We really wanted to hire you, but your salary range was, I don't know, like $4,000 higher or whatever than we were hiring. And then kind of kicked myself in the foot or whatever because I would have taken that job for $4,000 less. So we need to be really careful about what kind of numbers we're throwing out there. We're going to talk about how to research these numbers. So we're using real numbers. We don't want to go so low, of course, that if we get the job, we can't afford to pay our bills. But we also don't want to put ourselves in the position that I was in where I could have actually afforded to take that job for less and didn't consider it. So, Aida, what's your experience kind of with the negotiation side of things?
Yeah, it's interesting. I took a break from my career to stay home with the kids, and when I came back, I faced that issue, right? You lose a little bit of touch with the corporate world. And that first job back, I did not negotiate. I was like, this is way more than I was making when I stopped working, that I was so happy. And it fell within the range that they had for the position within my range. So I did not negotiate, but that was a very, very good experience. So from then on, I've negotiated every other role.
Right? And so that's funny that we both experienced that same thing. So, kind of on the same topic, what percentage of interviewees didn't negotiate their last job offer? Does anybody want to pop their guesses in the chat here? 45%. You want to try another number? 67, 60, 80. Okay, all good guesses. So, what is the answer? More than half. So, actually, you guys are spot on. So, what percentage of interviews didn't negotiate, as we just discussed neither of us did? More than half. So, 58% of men and 61% of women say they didn't ask for higher pay the last time they were hired. So, why would we want to negotiate, right? And as we just discussed a moment ago, that's money left on the table. And especially because your raises are based on what you're currently making. So, if you got a 2% raise, based on $35,000 versus a 2% raise based on $50,000, let's talk about how much money again that we are leaving on the table there. So, as it's stated here, all your salary increases over time are based on your current salary. So, the salary that you walk in with builds over time. In other words, the higher you start, the higher that salary will get over time. So, when should we negotiate? This has come up a lot. We talk about this even in our career fair prep course, where when we are talking to employers, we do not want to be talking numbers right off the bat. And Ada, I want you to tell us, kind of why that would be. Why would you not want to be discussing numbers right away?
Right. So the strategy should always be to position yourselves as a person that they really want to hire before you even say a number, so that you can come on and say, I am the person that you need. I have all the skills that the position description shows, and I'm your person to be hired.
Right, exactly. So you're just in a better position to negotiate after you know they already want you, right? And if you start bringing it up right away, they kind of put this little red flag in the back of their head that says, is this person interested in this job? Or are they just in it for the money? Obviously, money is an important factor. We're not just working for free here, but we don't want to put any kind of doubt in their mind if you start bringing up money right away. And again, remember that the power position is on you if if you wait for them to bring it up first and you know that they already want you, now you're in that position to negotiate. I'm not sure about you, but I've certainly been in situations before where they either in the screening phone call say, here's what the salary is. Is that acceptable to you? Let's not waste any more time, going forward. I know that Virginia has actually passed some laws that say you need to actually state the salary in the job announcement itself, which makes sense, right? Let's save both of us a whole bunch of time. If you're nowhere near, the ballpark, and vice versa, then let's just let me move on to another job that I'm more interested in that aligns with what I'm looking for, what I need to pay the bills, and what I feel I'm worth. So again, we don't want to talk about this beforehand. Again, we get into that tricky situation where sometimes we don't know what the salary is, and we're going to go over some strategies for how can we figure out what that is. If they are asking for a range, or a number right up front, we're going to give them a range. And as I used in that initial example, make sure the lower end of that range isn't so high that you would have taken the job for less. Also, don't make sure the lower end of that range is so low that you get the job at the low range, but now you can't pay your bills and that didn't help you at all anyway. So we want to be really careful about that. All right, let's take a peek here. So I'm curious, and you're welcome to pop into the chat. Have any of you successfully negotiated during a job offer? And of course, salary is not the only thing that we can negotiate. So if you want to pop in the chat, what were some of the things that you successfully negotiated? And I can tell you from experience, I have successfully negotiated, not necessarily the salary because they didn't want to move on the salary, but they were willing to do a hiring bonus. And that put me where I wanted to be. And then I had to have been employed there for a year before they would entertain that. Talk down the price of my car. There you go, right? That's negotiation strategy. Anybody have that experience during what have you successfully negotiated during your job interviews? No.
Yeah, so going back to that first job, even though I did not negotiate the salary, I did make sure that I was a remote employee. So location was important. Going back to the workforce as a mom, one of the things that I could negotiate was that being a remote employee, which came in handy after the pandemic ended and everyone had to go back to the office. So, as you said, there are many things that you can negotiate, signing bonuses, health insurance, and I've even heard of people negotiating their severance package so that if they're ever let go, they already have that negotiated before it even happened.
I love it. I'm just reading some of the other current comments here. Once negotiated, they asked what I was looking for, and I gave my lower end, still meeting my needs, and they accepted. Okay. Yep. That's what we need to know in advance, right? What are those numbers that we're willing to work with? One of the other things that I knew a supervisor of mine successfully negotiated was vacation time. They were offering, I don't know if it was like your standard 2 weeks, and they said, nope. How about 4 to 6 weeks? And they that was successful. So there are, and same thing with, you successfully working hybrid or working remote. there are these areas of negotiation that doesn't cost them anything, right? Bottom dollar wise. And that's where there's some nice flexibility there. And we'll kind of go over how we can work this. If you're not at the pay that you want, there's all sorts of like different little points in time and things that we can discuss, and we'll go into that more. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. So we want to make sure that we are asking, because again, the worst thing they can say is no, and then you're no worse off. But rather to do that than to be in that reverse situation. So we're talking about, let's say there is not a salary posted, or you just want to know what's my worth, right? With my education, my level of experience, all that kind of good stuff. What should I be asking for? I might know even in advance what that range is, but where should I be within that range? And so there's some tools here in front of you that you can certainly give a try to: salary.com, glassdoor.com. Glassdoor.com, also another good website for reading reviews for those positions. I know you're like nodding along like you have used this tool. Have you used it before?
Yeah, for every single job. So it's very good because the anonymous reviews from other employees give you information about everything for that company, from the approval rate of the CEO, how is the interview process, the salary ranges for the position that you're looking for. So I highly recommend Glassdoor. You can compare your current company, say it has a rating of 3, and the one that you're moving to has a rating of 4.5 or something like that, then you know that that's something that you really need to work on to get that job.
So I have definitely, and then we're actually going to I'm going to show you live ONET, what this looks like, what that resource is. It's good for a lot of things, but we're going to talk about salary and some other areas. Salary Expert, Paycheck City, the NACE Salary Calculator. So we're going to do a quick exercise here. On the next screen here, you see this activity where we just want to familiarize ourselves with some of these tools. So why don't you go ahead, think of a job title that you might be interested in. For my business students, that might be a business analyst, operations manager, data analyst, depending on, maybe it's an accountant, depending on what your concentration is in. But go ahead and pick one of these tools, look up a job title in the area you want to live in. You can stick with DC if you're not sure, but take a moment, and I'll give you just a couple minutes here to pick one of these tools. Look up again the job title that you might be interested in the area you want to work, and see what it comes up with, and then post your findings in the chat. Okay. And obviously, if you are going for your CPA, I'm sure there is a wide range depending on, are you working for KPMG? Are you going to be being an entrepreneur? As we discussed earlier, I'd want you to talk a little bit about your, knowledge of sort of the difference within that accounting field itself.
Yeah, definitely. So I never got my CPA because I went right after school. I went into the software industry with MicroStrategy, and then private equity with the Carlyle Group. The CPA wasn't really needed because that wasn't my focus for a big four CPA firm. And then I got my MBA instead. So that was the path that I took, with a concentration on global businesses, which is very helpful right now in the business environment that we're in. I've had my own business for the last 8 years, helping small minority businesses in the Latin community here and young professionals get started with their financial picture. So it's accounting, it is a wide range of areas that you can use your expertise in. As a fun fact, I got a dual degree at Mason. So I did accounting and marketing. So it was very interesting to see the two aspects, especially because as an accountant, you're always labeled as an introvert, which I'm not. So that's a fun fact here. Yeah.
I love that. And I love to hear that too about the CPA, because I think um, a lot of people with that accounting get that tunnel vision of, if I'm getting an accounting degree, it's not really useful unless I go ahead and get that CPA, and that is just so not true, right? Because as you know, there's so many wide varieties of areas that you can be using that accounting degree for.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, I see some good responses in here. Business communications specialist in Maryland, 60 to 70 on Glassdoor. We got a financial analyst for 81 to 130. Ooh, sign me up on Glassdoor, 72 to 120. So helpful, wonderful. I'm glad you're utilizing those sites. So let's just take a peek here. If I look at the next page, this is looking up a data analyst role in DC. And so you can see here, this was from salary.com. And it tells me what that median range is, which is around 75. Perfect. So here is what is cool about this. So let's look up, this is what Own It looks like. And this is drawing from Department of Labor information. So they have a ton of cool resources on here, you guys. Here's the Own It on the right side where it says, I want to be a, or we're trying to figure out what are we interested in. There's this Own It interest profiler that is free to take, and it'll give you suggestions based on your interest. And there's all sorts of options to it. This My Next Move, what might you be interested in? But over here is where I'm going to focus. On this left side, we can look up by job title. What are the occupations that have a really bright hiring outlook? Job duties, all this kind of great stuff. But for the purposes of this assignment, I want to look up, see if we can look up some analyst roles here. So we see these little sunshines after these. These are indicating that these have a bright outlook for hiring. Doesn't mean that some of these other ones might not be a negative, but they might not just have the same amount of increase that you're going to see with these little sunshine ones. So I'm just going to pull up business intelligence analyst, and then it'll give you all sorts of information. So what kind of tasks would you do? What kind of technological skills would you need? Detailed work activities, job zone, credentials, la 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 la. And then here's the part that's cool. Down here, give me information based on any state you want to live in, any area. You can do it by city, you can do it by state, and then it'll give you, hey, if you're interested in this role, check out at the bottom these related occupations. I'm just going to take a peek, and I want to see what is this looking like here in Virginia. Put in Mason's little zip code there. So $135,000 as the median doesn't sound too shabby. Down here, it'll give you, if you're going to stick to the DC area, that's what you're looking at. Here's the low range, here's the upper range in Virginia. Here's that. And then if you're looking at how that compares to the United States at large. So very cool, helpful tool, giving you the bright outlook, which again, it's expected to grow rapidly. That's why you are seeing that little sunshine there. So this is a very useful tool. And again, this will be in my follow-up email to you all. So how can we answer the salary range question? And how do we figure out this worth? So I'm interested in a salary that reflects my skills and experience. What we don't want to do is have this conversation of, and I've seen people do it where I really need to make X, right? I need to make, and that's not a skill offer for me as the employer, right? That is not a benefit to me that you need to make that amount of money. So what you need to do is when you are in this negotiation, you need to be working in the skills and the strengths, the experience, what you're bringing to the table that is unique to you, that stands apart from others, and why should I be considering, this range. So you can, again, this is where that homework really comes in handy. And you can say, I'm interested in a salary that reflects my skills, experience, and the responsibilities of this role based on my experience and the value I can bring. I'm aiming for a salary in the range of this to this. However, I'm open to discussion. Okay. Ida, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, sometimes it's frustrating, right? Because you're looking at the all of the positions that you have, and not all of them give a salary range even. So you go in blind, so to speak. So you sometimes don't want to give away your salary range because you don't know what the salary range is for that position in the budget for that company. So
Mhm.
it is totally okay to say, to don't give that salary range to begin with and just say something in the lines of, I'd love to learn more about what responsibilities are in this role and the overall compensation package before giving you a specific salary range. And maybe can you share the budget for this position? So that puts it back on the employer, and it really gives you an upper hand to see what their budget is. And then you can, with the knowledge, with your research that you've done, you know if you fall within the range even.
I love that. Yes, exactly. So this, even if now you can get into, there's a part like, so for example, if you were to apply for a job at George Mason, that salary is a mandatory field in your application. So that's where you're just going to have needed to have done your research and those resources that we already looked at. Unfortunately, too, when you get into the pay bands, it's like $100,000 range. So it's not super helpful. So we do try to tell you exactly what that amount is that you can expect, because to your point, budgeting wise, there's absolutely something they have in mind. And so one option is put it back on them and just say, I have done some research, but I'm really interested to learn more about the position before I answer that question. You're in that screening process and they're trying to weed people out, and they're going to force your hand to tell you, again, do our research so we have an idea of what that range might be that we're willing to work for. And again, keep it as a range versus a solid number to give you some wiggle room within there. Okay. So as we're talking, know your worth. And we're going to talk about in a second too how we can stand out from the competition, because if I feel like I'm bringing something to the table not everybody else is offering, I'm in a much better position to negotiate, right? And that doesn't necessarily have to be I have 5 more years of experience than everybody else. There's other things, and we'll go over that what that looks like. But realize nobody's paying the higher end unless you meet and exceed everything they're looking for. So you have to understand that when you're applying for jobs, you have to assume that everybody else is meeting the same minimum qualifications, right? They're only interviewing the people who are meeting those qualifications. So saying that I have the experience and I meet the qualifications is not going to be enough, right? Because great, but I've got 20 other candidates who also meet the qualifications. So what's unique to you and how do you stand apart? When negotiating, present evidence from schoolwork, internships, uh, or job experience to justify, again, what you're asking. All right. Here's the gold, you guys. This is what we want to be aware of, is how can you stand apart? Everybody's taken the same classes in this specific concentration. Maybe we had a couple student jobs or an internship, but how do I stand apart from everybody else who might have the same coursework I do? Or the same, 1 to 2 years experience that I have from internships or student jobs or whatever it is. And here it is in front of you. All right, so we can gain some additional experience and credentials and show that initiative on our part that I didn't just do what the coursework was, right? I went above and beyond to grow for professional development opportunities and took advantage of that. So here, if you take a peek, LinkedIn Learning, you all get free as a student at George Mason. So make sure you take advantage of that. Career Explorer, LinkedIn's Career Explorer is a great tool. We can go over that in a second. Forage is the best kept secret at Mason, hands down. It is a really great way to bridge the gap between I went to school and I need an entry-level job, but every entry-level job seems to want some experience. How do I get the experience if for these entry-level positions if no one will hire me? What does that look like? Forage is a really great way to bridge that gap. As is another resource called Parker Dewey, which I can share with you as well. But Forage is job simulations you can do in your field for huge companies. We're talking PwC, EY, KPMG, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs are all on there. And again, I'll be happy to kind of show you what this looks like. But Forage is, again, the best kept secret at Mason. You have access to it as a Mason student using your GMU account. And if you have some of these completed job simulations proving you can do the job and you are putting those on your resume, you are absolutely standing apart from your peers. Okay. So nothing, so I'm going for a job at Bank of America. I have Bank of America on my resume because I've completed these tasks that I would be doing on the job. Again, that just really helps me stand apart in a great way. Again, tons of other free resources for you out there. Coursera, Udemy, PMP. I would also say too, anything AI. If you have those two letters, you're nodding along. Right now, at this point in time, if you can have AI, anything that you have done, certification you've taken, extra course you've taken, again, even if it's one of these free trainings that take less than a day, and have that on your resume, you will absolutely be catching that recruiter's attention, right? Ida, can you talk for a second about how you're using AI in your field?
Yeah, AI is really big right now, especially in the finance industry. I do want to give the introduction, though, that AI is a tool, right? So it is not a replacement for knowledge, and that's how we should use it at any point in your career. So as you're getting started, I agree with you, Kelly, that it should be a tool that it is in your resume. Get all of the training that you can because it is something that is needed to get into the job market right now. And if you have advanced knowledge of it, you can even create more value to the company that you're going to go into. I personally use AI as my knowledge base and I use it for my marketing. Again, I'm a small business myself, so using it to extend my knowledge and create value for my business to make it grow has been very, very good.
Perfect. So these are those job simulations, and each one of them takes less than a day. Okay, so if you click on this job simulation up top, and we can give our computer a moment here, you can look by career interest and look at one of those categories, AI, right there. So let's click there and see what's cooking there. There's different levels. You have introductory, intermediate, it goes up to advanced. You even see how long it would take to complete some of these courses. And again, it'll walk you through why would you want to complete this? How does it work? What are the tasks that you would complete? They give you a little scenario. You're a junior data scientist with Boston Consulting Group, not a teeny little firm, right? Something most of us have heard of. And so it's going to tell you what your role is, what your goal is, and as each task, what you'll learn, what you'll do. And when you get to the finish line, it even tells you, here's a snippet you should add to your resume, and here's how you can talk about this in interviews. Is that the coolest thing you've ever seen in your life or what? I just can't say enough about it. The other resource I had mentioned that is not in that list is called Parker Dewey. I'm going to pop that in our chat. Parker Dewey is micro internships that are paid. These are all paid experiences. You apply for these like any other internship, but they're more project based and you do them remotely on your own time. So it says, complete this project. Here's how much you get paid when this is complete. It gives you experience in different fields. So this is definitely another resource you can do in a short amount of time to get some experience even while you are completing your degree. Because again, it's not, I have to work these hours to fit them in with my school schedule and that kind of stuff. That's not how this works. Again, this is on your own time. You want to do this project at 2 a.m., you go ahead. You just need to complete it within a certain time frame. This is another resource for you that is open to everybody. This is really cool because we can scroll through the really pretty part to get down to the useful part, and we can type in, where do we want to work? Let's just put in DC. What do you want to be? Marketing. Let's do marketing data analyst just to mix it up here. Now it'll tell you not only what skills most commonly appear in these types of jobs, but this is a really great way to learn that negotiation piece of how can I set myself apart from the competition? Because I can look at this list and say, okay, I did do some Tableau, while I was taking some of my analytics courses, but I'm not really well versed in Power BI or SQL or R, whatever it is. So I'm going to do a quick little LinkedIn learning for free and get that language on my resume somewhere. So then I can really stand apart because maybe they weren't even asking for this. Man, is it going to help me stand apart from the competition if I have it on there? The other way we can use this too is, let's say that job description is super vague. I don't even know what I should be putting on my resume because I need to make it targeted, but they didn't say much. And this gives you sort of some of those keywords that they might be looking for as well. And I'll go ahead and pop this in our chat as well. And that is LinkedIn's Career Explorer tool. We do have a new resource that we just created in the last 2 weeks or so, and that is called the Certificate Options by Concentration. So if you click on there, you do need to be logged in under your OneDrive account for your students, but you log into there, you can put in your concentration for those of you in the business school, and it'll say, here's the recommendations based on your concentration of some little bonus things you might want to consider. And those will be things that you can do from Forage, from LinkedIn Learning. Maybe it's a Coursera, Udemy course, but it'll be quick little things that you can add on to your current concentration. And again, a lot of these are a day or less that'll help you stand apart. So we just put that resource together again in the last couple weeks, so that's can be helpful. And again, I'm going to send this PowerPoint out afterwards, so you'll have all of these links. And why do we deserve a higher salary? Again, this goes back to that knowing your worth. How do you phrase this? So we want to talk about our education, our skills, any relevant experience. If you have done some Forage coursework, or you, especially for that specific company, you absolutely want to be talking about that here. And then again, this gives you sort of a basis or a frame for how we discuss that. And it'll be based on your research and all that good stuff. Okay. I will just say one note about this, and this kind of goes to the AI piece that I was mentioning. We want to use AI as a tool. We do not, please, please, please don't ever, never, 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 ever, never get into an interview like this and read me a screen. I have seen people do it. It's not a quiz on your reading skills. That is not what this interview is about. I want to know if you can think on your feet, answer questions intelligently. Did you prepare for this interview? All that good stuff. So please do not come up with the perfect script for why you deserve a higher salary and then read me. I believe my education, skills, and relevant experiences make me a strong candidate for this, right? That's going to be such a huge flag. Have you ever seen that? Have you had that happen?
Yeah, actually, and you can tell, right? Even though you may think that you're so clever that you put it at the height so that the camera doesn't really let you lie, so to speak, you can, as an interviewer, I have experienced that, and it is such a red flag. As soon as I see that, already checked out of the interview, right? Because I know that this person is not authentic, has not done their job right. So it's using AI as a replacement for their skills. And then from there, the interview becomes something else, right? So more things that are not usual. And also, something to think about is the more authentic you are and the more knowledgeable you are to speak about your experience, the better that connection with the interviewer is going to be, especially when you're in settings like this, like we are today, right? Where you don't have a person to read their body language, but you have them on a camera. So you have to work on getting their trust through a screen, and using AI and reading from a script is definitely not the way.
No, even when it's what we see now is the recorded interview that you're required to do in advance. We do those for our intern roles that we have, and I absolutely discount anybody who is reading me their answers. Because again, like you're saying, I'm trying to get a feel for this person's personality. I'm not quizzing you on how many words a minute you can read. That is not dazzling to me. I had an employer last semester tell me that they would hire character over competence. And I thought that was really interesting because it was like, show me your personality, show me that you're somebody, and a lot of things too is like I noticed that when people are reading, they're never smiling, right? They're not engaging, they just look, it's almost like a computer system reading me something. So please don't take that approach. So when you're negotiating, highlight your achievements, like we've talked about. And this kind of goes to the smiling piece of it, but express your enthusiasm and interest, right? We don't want to burn any bridges. So we also want to talk about how this isn't just about money. This is about bringing me onto your team because I am fired up about this role. I'm really excited to work for your company specifically, not just I got my degree in business analytics, and so I want to be a business analyst. So that's why I'm interested in this role. Or I just need a job. Or I really need to make X, or any of that kind of stuff. That's a red flag and a big downer. We want to smile and sound excited about the job and have done our homework and know a lot about the company and again have done our research on what that salary range is and all that good stuff. And we want to talk about what our added value is. And this is again another opportunity to showcase what are those additional professional development opportunities you took upon yourself to complete that your peers maybe didn't. So there are lots of techniques for doing this, but we want to practice makes perfect, of course, and it's true here. Practice in front of a mirror, practice with one of our career advisors. Obviously, we have some AI tools I'll go into in a second where you can actually record your responses and it will kind of score you and say, here's what you did well, here's what you might not need to work on. You used 15 times. So you want to make sure that you are practicing in advance. They can tell on the other end. And again, looking into a mirror, practicing with one of us. We are happy to do mock interviews. You come to my office and tell me you are interviewing for a business analyst role with this company. I will research those questions and ask you their specific questions that you may be asked. That's another great resource for Glassdoor that you could find some of the sample interview questions that they might ask you. You're nodding along like you've seen that as well. Is that what you've done to research?
Yes, definitely. And it is the most important thing that I've done throughout my career is practicing in front of the mirror because it really gives you an insight of how you're smiling. Are you smiling? Are you maintaining eye contact? Now with AI tools like we have, that scoring is amazing. That will really help you see how many words are you putting in that are really related to the role that you're interested in and keeping that conversation going with the interviewer. Again, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you practice, 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 practice. Because if you're just winging it to do it there, or you're just reading it in your head, it is never going to come out if you start just vocalizing that, even in front of a mirror, a roommate. Career services is great. I would definitely advise.
So this is just some of the questions that you could be prepared for, and specifically, of course, we talk about interviews in general, but in salary negotiation, what was your previous salary? Are you considering other job offers? These are all questions that you can prepare for in advance. Practice in the mirror. We talked about practice with a career advisor. Costello Career AI is our tool, our AI tool. But just remember, AI is not the one interviewing you, right? So you can use that as a tool to get better, but please make an appointment with us as well to talk to an actual human and get some responses that way. I will say I met with a student maybe 3 weeks ago. We did a mock interview. I had him come in. We were doing a panel. He didn't know that in advance because you just sometimes never know how many people are going to be on that call. And so there was 3 of us asking questions. We gave him feedback afterwards, and he did email me about a week later and say it was so helpful. I actually got the job offer. And so there is definite value to, instead of just testing with the AI system, that's still a tool to use, but make sure that you actually come in. And this is what that tool looks like. There's a QR code there to gain access to it, but you can use it for your resume, practicing your introduction, which helps in 2 different ways, right? You're going to use that elevator pitch not only at a career fair, but that first question when you sit down in the interview is, tell me about yourself, right? And that can help you figure out that self introduction. If it says, you are talking way too much, wrap it up. So there's some really good feedback you can get there. And then you can pick the types of interviews you're doing, the types of questions it's going to ask you. So that's definitely a tool to utilize. And then we talked about briefly at the beginning that salary is just one piece of what we can negotiate, right? So if we take a peek here, we can do a benefits package, signing bonus, as I mentioned at the beginning, vacation time, I also mentioned, remote, as Ida had done herself, bonuses and incentives, professional development opportunities, job title, the annual review. So I mentioned at the beginning that there were some other pieces of this. So let's say they offer you a salary that is lower than you had wanted to start. And they do an evaluation every single year. So they do their annual review, and that is based, that's what your potential raise is based on. One of the things that you could possibly negotiate was, instead of the annual review happening after a year, can we revisit how I'm doing at 3 months, at 6 months, at the first quarter, whatever it is, to negotiate possibly getting that salary up sooner. Now, again, this doesn't happen up front. This happens after you know they want you and they have made that offer and you're in that negotiation situation. All right, so that's one little wiggle room area. And then, of course, we talked about things that don't cost them any money, like remote work or vacation time, things like that. You could have, sometimes it's you have to work here before so long before we start contributing to your 401k, or 403b or whatever it is. Can that date be negotiated? Can we negotiate you pay for my Metro bus pass? Right? There's all these little areas. Ada, anything to add to this list or anything you want to throw in here?
Yeah, no, that's a very good list. As I said at the beginning, your severance package, right? Because if a company is taken over by another and you get laid off, maybe negotiating that. All of these are things that I've negotiated in the past. The one that you just mentioned about the annual review happening within 3 to 6 months of hire is a big one. Many companies in the DMV area are used to that type of negotiation. And it really gives you a upper hand because now you really need to show them how you work. And after 3 months or 6 months, they do the review and you've surpassed what you put as goals, then you have an extra wiggle room there to even ask for a little more, right? So you are going back to the negotiation table and saying, okay, we talked about negotiating this at 6 months. I've surpassed what we put as goals. I think now I'm eligible to so and so and so more. So it is a very good tool.
Yeah, and certainly a piece of that too is not only have I proven myself, but what if now I'm certified in such and such area, right? There's some additional things that you're trained in or have picked up along the way that gives you even more power to negotiate. So that's all perfect point. And I mentioned transportation costs there. Also a big point here, get it in writing, right? Not just a verbal handshake. As my last boss told me, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So we want to make sure that everything we're discussing here is in writing. It does, in my experience, does tend to be HR emails going back and forth, right? Where I'm asking in writing, I'm receiving a response in writing, and then of course that offer gets typed up and we sign it. And so you get to see everything that was agreed upon. Things to avoid when negotiating. We did already talk about some of this stuff where I have bills to pay, I need to make X, right? Again, that doesn't help me as the employer. We, of course, don't want to be burning bridges by making threats or being overly aggressive, comparing, well, I know so and so works here and they get paid this, so I should too. Again, focusing on your merits and your value rather than comparing to others. Exaggerating and falsifying. This is also especially where we've seen that AI come into play because we've had recruiters in the middle of an interview talk about things that were on that resume and that person gave them a blank stare because ChatGPT said they did something fabulous and that person did not do that. And so we need to make sure all that stuff is accurate. But again, can you back up your claims? If you say you have a certification or training in this or experience in this, make sure that, again, you can back that up. We want to be confident. Again, we have to kind of find that perfect balance between confidence and aggressiveness and all that kind of good stuff. I will say this has certainly come up, that lack of confidence piece. I used to see when I was training people, women, to get into the construction industry years and years ago. And and we talked about at the very beginning that statistic and the difference between men and women and who negotiated. And it was actually a higher amount of women who failed to negotiate that offer. And I think maybe that lack of confidence plays a role there. I will say, again, the example I was going to use is I used to train women in construction, and they would go through the same training as the men. And when they got to that interview, they would be asked the same questions, and they would say, "What's your experience with this?" And the men would say, "Yep, I can do that. We did that on such and such day." And the women would say, I mean, we covered it for like a day, but I'm not like super good at it. And it was just like underselling themselves. So we do want to, again, this kind of goes to that mirror piece and like practicing for what your responses will be in advance, kind of building up that confidence. Happy to do that again through meetings with us as you do mock interviews, and how to kind of demonstrate, because you do have the skills and you do have the knowledge. So we just need to figure out how to showcase that. On that note, if you would like to schedule an appointment and build up your confidence for these interviews and the negotiation strategies, you can certainly schedule an appointment with us. Here's our contact information. We can meet virtually, we can meet in person, whatever works. We have drop-in hours Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Here's a couple groups you might want to join. The Costello Career Collective is where you can chat with employers and other students, see what their experiences have been. If you have questions, you can post them there. And then if we have any international students joining us today, we do have an international Costello College Business Networking group. And again, I'm going to send this out afterwards, so you can certainly join there. And why would you want to connect with us on social media? Because we post jobs that are not found on Handshake. So if you scan our LinkedIn profile there on the right, you can join our group there. That's different from the Costello Career Collective group you saw on the previous screen. This is where we are going to post stories of successful interns. We're going to post job opportunities, again, that you might not find other places. We're going to post upcoming trainings and workshops that we're doing. And then on our Instagram, we have very funny videos, kind of giving you some do's and don'ts when it comes to resumes and interviews and events you shouldn't miss and all that good stuff. So there are a couple good resources there for you. And that's it, you guys. And any words of encouragement or advice you want to share that we didn't touch on?
Thank you so much for having me today. I want to make sure that everybody gets away with one thing, is always negotiate. Do not be fast to accept that first offer when they give it to you. And it's okay to say, let me think about it. I will get back to you. Totally fine. Always negotiate, especially if you are a woman, as we saw in the statistics. And even when you're looking at the position description, sometimes it's happened to me. I do not fit every single thing in the description, but I do fit about 80% of it. Go ahead and apply for it, because again, we go back to character over experience. So I'm really happy to have been here with you, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Thanks for joining us. We went right to 2 o'clock, so I won't keep you guys any longer. But thanks so much for joining us. And as I mentioned, the recording will be available shortly here. We'll get that out to you. But everybody, thanks for joining us and have a great day.